The first snow of the season drifted over the green roofs of Castle Era like sifted sugar, dusting the battlements, catching on the mullioned windows, silencing the cobbled courtyards. Lucienne de Sucre stood at the highest kitchen window, with her sleeves rolled and her apron powdered white, watching the flakes swirl into the night. Somewhere in the hush, bells tolled 11. In 1 hour, the ancient ice house would open its scarred oak door, and, if rumor spoke true, the sculptor would step through the shadows. 7 days remained before the winter ball, the grandest festival in the kingdom. Ball gowns were still being hemmed, violins tuned, walls hung with fragrant pine boughs. But most of the palace whispers concerned not jewels or music, but sugar. The young queen desired an entire banquet hall transformed into a frozen garden, arches of snow-petaled roses, swans with wings outspread, fountains whose droplets never melted. Everything was to be fashioned from pulled, blown, spun, and cast sugar, sweet as snowlight and brittle as ice. Lucienne, recently promoted to royal pastry chef, had been given the commission. She accepted it with a confident bow, then hurried to the kitchens and quietly panicked. Sugar could be coaxed into miracles, yet the cold made it treacherous. The slightest draft could craze a transparent wall. A sudden drip of condensation could ruin days of work. Her first attempts ended in shatters, glistening shards across the marble floor, her apprentices scrambling with brooms while Lucienne's cheeks burned. It was after the third disaster that Melisande, an elderly confectioner who stirred caramel in copper pans, told her of the sculptor. "He works only in silence and dark," the old woman murmured while steam fogged her spectacles. "An artist unmatched, cursed or blessed. No one knows. They say he appears at midnight near the ice house. My mother's mother saw him once. Frost clung to his cloak like jewels." Lucienne listened, half dismissing the legend, half desperate enough to believe. That night, she stayed at her work table until the hourglass emptied, then donned a wool shawl and crossed the courtyard. Icicles hung like daggers from arches. The moonlight lay blue on the stones. As the bells tolled 12, she rested a hand on the iron latch of the ice house. The old larder, where past kings stored blocks of river ice, hauled in midsummer. The door swung inward without her touch. Inside, candlelight trembled across slabs of crystalline ice, stacked against walls black with age. Amid the glimmer stood a man, or what, in the flicker, seemed a man. He was tall, spare, wrapped in a cloak pale as hoarfrost. A thin veil hid his features. He turned, and though the flame showed only suggestion of cheek and brow, Lucienne felt an artist's gaze assessing her like sugar on a marble slab. "You seek guidance," he said, voice low as distant sleigh bells. She found her tongue. "If you are the sculptor, yes, I have 7 nights left, and too many visions, and hands that fail them." He inclined his head. "Bring no one else. Return each midnight with warm sugar, white hot and pliable. I will show you secrets, and you will craft wonders." Lucienne, raised to respect mastery in any form, curtsied. When she rose, the sculptor was turning away, already half vanishing among the lurking pillars of ice. The next night she arrived with a copper cauldron balanced on a wheeled cart, sugar syrup bubbling, the kitchen boy panting behind. She sent the boy off before she dared cross the threshold. The sculptor waited with tools laid on a cloth, chisels thin as knitting needles, tweezers delicate as eyelashes, a whistle of glass for blowing globes. First, he taught her to weave filaments of sugar into vines. He dipped a gloved fingertip into the molten syrup, drew it upward. The thread cooled into a strand so fine the lantern flame shimmered through it. Lucienne imitated him, her hands trembling at the sting of heat, but she found the moment where pain turned to possibility. Under their dual touch, the vines multiplied, each leaf veined, each thorn gleaming. By dawn, she carried back to the pastry kitchens a garland, luminous as dawn ice, unbroken despite her route through swirling snow. Daylight in the royal kitchens was cacophony, rolling pins thudding, fireboxes roaring, scullions shouting for space. Still, everyone paused to gape at Lucienne's garland. She did not speak of the sculptor, only instructed her apprentices to fashion pedestals. Rumor, however, crept through cracks faster than drafts. Some said the pastry chef had found fairy teachers. Others, that she used alchemy or sacrilege. The steward of stores, Lord Briarton, grew suspicious. Supplies vanished nightly. Sacks of sugar, vats of glucose, and reappeared as impossible art. The queen herself came to inspect on the second morning. She wore a cloak trimmed with white fox, eyes bright with sleepless anticipation. "You have outdone my imagination already," she said, touching a leaf that chimed faintly under her glove. "Will your next pieces match such grace?" Lucienne bowed. "Your Majesty will have an entire forest of sugar, each branch set with winter's own jewels." Confidence warmed her words, yet as dusk fell, she feared disappointing both sovereign and sculptor. Sharp-witted, she realized she had learned only a fragment of his knowledge. The third midnight, she brought sugar tinted with silver dust. Under the sculptor's guidance, she blew it into hollow spheres, cooled them on chilled iron. He showed her how to nip each globe with tweezers, shaping prismatic facets until miniature lanterns glittered like frozen fireflies. He whispered the precise breath, the exact heartbeat between inflation and implosion. Between demonstrations, Lucienne asked questions. "Why hide? Why teach me?" "Every artist needs an echo," he answered, rasped soft with old sorrow. "Your hunger mirrors mine. Through your hands, I finish a work begun long ago." She tried to glimpse his face. The veil wavered, but the shadows inside remained as inscrutable as obsidian. Word of the emerging sculptures reached foreign embassies. The Grand Duke of Karst dispatched spies, disguised as footmen, to glimpse the banquet hall. They returned babbling of sugar roses with petals thin as dragonfly wings, of swans whose reflections appeared to swim across polished floors. Meanwhile, Lord Brereton inspected store ledgers, muttering over the quantities of vanilla and cream diverted from customary desserts. When he cornered Lucienne, she offered crisp accounts of tarts and trifles, refusing mention of the solitary artist in the ice house. On the fourth night, the sculptor placed a curved blade in her hand. "Tonight we carve motion," he said, guiding her wrist to the chilled sugar block she had poured earlier. He moved behind her, his touch cool even through her wool sleeve. Stroke by stroke, they released a leaping fish from frozen translucence. Lucienne felt the blade sing, each cut reverberating up her arm. When the last chip fell, the fish appeared to leap eternally, water suggested by arcs of spun sugar suspended mid-splash. She blurted, "You shape more than sugar. You shape time." A pause, his breath misted. "Time is brittle, like this medium. Keep it warm and malleable, or let it shatter into beauty. Both serve." As dawn pinked the snowdrifts, he vanished, leaving footprints that faded to frost. Lucienne trudged back to the kitchens, with the fish cradled in a box lined with lamb's wool. She no longer questioned impossibility. Exhaustion and exhilaration twined within her like ribbons of pulled sugar. News of the displays swept through nobility. Some courtiers feared the sculptures would crumble before the ball. Others wagered on how many might survive a single toast. The queen remained serene, yet her chancellor reminded Lucienne, "Public wonder is fragile. Deliver perfection or offer resignation. 5 nights had passed. 2 remained. The sculptor's teachings grew urgent, as if a silent metronome quickened. They worked side by side, rarely speaking. Lucienne learned to fuse sugar with flecks of edible gold, creating half-visible seam lines that caught moonlight like cracks in ice. She sensed a restless tension within her mentor. He circled her work, correcting angles, his cloak whispering like pages of a forgotten book. When she asked his name, he brushed the question aside. Names imprison, craft liberates. After that, she pressed no further. Yet she noticed his reflection only faintly marked mirrors. Candles guttered when he passed. She began to suspect that Melisandre's tales of curses were nearer truth than gossip. On the 6th night, a blizzard roared in across the sea. Snow scythed horizontally, bearing lanterns, choking chimneys. Most of the palace locked shutters, but Lucienne fought through drifts to the ice house. Inside, the sculptor awaited her above a square block of sapphire-tinted sugar. "We will fashion the centerpiece," he said, voice almost drowned by the wind shrieking through chinks. "A stag crowned with winter, antlers of crystalline lace. It must stand 10 feet, unbroken." Lucien's heart hammered. "That height cannot pass through the kitchen doors. It will never enter the kitchens." He swept a hand across the icy floor. "We sculpt here, then carry it through tunnels the masons sealed centuries ago. They open for those who remember." She swallowed fear, heated syrup, and they began. Hours rushed like ravens. The sculptor carved the stag's torso with sweeping gouges, while Lucienne spun antlers, branching filaments strengthened by trickles of mallow syrup, yet supplies dwindled. Midway, the syrup pot stood scraped bare. "We've nothing left," she gasped. He placed both palms on the sugar. Frost blossomed beneath his skin. "I can lend you my chill. Use it." She took a breath, let her bare fingers settle on the sculpture. Instead of sticking, the sugar cooled to velvet hardness under her touch. She shaped ridges, smoothed furrows, the material answering as if alive. By the final stroke, dawn's pallid light threaded through gaps in the shutters. The stag towered, its silhouette stark against the storm. When she reached to steady an antler, it rang like crystal. "You lent me your gift," she murmured, "for 1 night more. Tomorrow at midnight my debt ends." "What debt?" "Once, long ago, I failed a queen who dreamed of thawless beauty," he said. "She died before I could deliver. Her heirs left my work to molder. My spirit bound itself here, unfinished. Only through another's hands could I complete the promise." His eyes, glimpsed at last as the veil stirred, shone not with mortal reflection, but a glacial luminance. "When the ball guests marvel, the vow releases me." Fear and gratitude twisted within Lucienne. She might have pledged to go on working with him forever, but the stag's hooves cracked the silence. A hairline fissure across the plinth. Time, that brittle sugar, was running out. The storm cleared by afternoon. Servants shoveled paths. Musicians rehearsed. Lords and ladies arrived in sleighs, carrying snow brocade wraps. In the underground corridor, the stag rested, encased by crates of hot bricks to absorb stray moisture. Lucienne paced the banquet hall, orchestrating placement of garlands, lanterns, the leaping fish fountain. She personally polished each sculpture with camellia oil, sealing them against humidity. In every facet she glimpsed the sculptor's unseen hands. His patience. Evening descended, and with it, ceremony. The queen greeted dignitaries beneath archways woven of sugar honeysuckle. As dancers swept across the floor, sculpture refracted candlelight into slow blizzards of color. Gasps bloomed in unison. Children tried to catch rainbow motes. Ambassadors silently recalibrated their respect for Era. At the feast, a hush fell when servants rolled aside a false wall and revealed the hidden corridor. Out from its gloom glided the sugar stag on a wheeled dais, antlers brushing chandeliers, hooves set upon a base of spun ice grass. Breath seemed to lodge collectively in throats. Then applause crashed like thaw upstream. The queen rose, astonished tears trembling on her lashes. Lucienne, trembling too, stepped back, letting the watchers own their wonder. She half expected Briarton to denounce her enigmas, but the steward merely dabbed eyes with his handkerchief, undone by beauty. Midnight approached. Musicians tuned for the final waltz. Snow began again outside, tapping panes. Lucienne felt a prickle along her nape, the sculptor's hour. She slipped away from the dais, following the corridor to the ice house. The door already stood ajar. Inside, not even the candles burned. She feared he had vanished without farewell. "Here," said his voice, echoing where no form stood. A moonbeam pierced a crack overhead, scattering cold silver on the floor. Within that beam, motes swirled, sugar dust, drawn like constellation stars. "You kept your promise," he said. "Now I keep mine." The motes coalesced, revealing him not as man, but as something fashioned of frost, light, and possibility, an effigy carved from the winter he adored. Every contour glimmered like the sculptures he taught her to create. "I am returning to the first silence," he whispered, "but I leave you the craft." She felt tears scald. "What if I still need you?" "Art breeds new artists. Remember temperature, breath, and patience. Remember that fragility is not a flaw, but an invitation." He extended his hand. Upon it lay the slender chisel she had used the first night. "Pass this when another hungers." Lucienne cupped the tool, the metal cold yet pulsing faintly. When she looked up, the beam dissolved. Where he had stood drifted a gentle snowfall of sugar crystals, each unique as truth. They scattered across the stones, tinkling softly, then melted. The bells began to ring midnight. From the banquet hall rose a thrill of voices. Lucienne hurried back along corridors that felt wider, brighter. She entered as the final chime resonated. In that instant, something miraculous occurred. Every sugar sculpture shimmered with inner radiance, light blooming from veins and facets, brighter than any candle. Gasps erupted. Dancers froze mid-turn. The queen raised her scepter in salute, recognizing enchantment beyond mortal engineering. Through windows, Lucienne glimpsed a streak of starlight arch across the sky, then fade. She clasped the chisel against her heart and bowed to the queen, who beckoned her onto the dais. "Chef de sucre," the queen proclaimed, voice carrying above harp and hushed audience. "You have spun winter into sweetness and gifted the kingdom wonder. Speak, that all may know your art." Lucienne glanced at the stag's icy eye, at roses that never wilted, at globes of frozen illumination. She considered revealing everything, the midnight lessons, the spirit sculptor bound by an unfinished vow. But the hall bristled with mortal expectations, and the story belonged to more than her. It belonged to awe itself. So she spoke simply. "Majesty, I worked with guidance unseen, yet felt in every cut. These sculptures remind us that even winter sustains hidden warmth, that the cold can cradle delicate dreams. May they endure as long as wonder lives in Era." The hall erupted in applause, deeper than thunder on glaciers. Music surged anew. Couples resumed the waltz. Children danced beneath sugar vines to catch falling flecks kicked loose by vibrations. The air tasted sweet with possibility. Later, after the crowds dispersed and fireplaces shrank to embers, Lucienne roamed the hall. No guard protested. None wished to tarnish the magic. She inspected each piece for cracks, found none. Under the stag's chin, she discovered a single crystal shaping itself, grain by grain, into the outline of a snowflake. She smiled, knowing the craft had not ended. It had merely found new ways to manifest. Months passed, then years. Lucien became master of the royal confectionaries, training apprentices diligent and curious. Every winter, she led them to the ice house. They never saw the sculptor, but they felt presence in the stillness, in the way candles flared at midnight, in sudden gusts of chill that curved molten sugar into elegance beyond their skill. Upon graduation, she handed each worthy student a tool, a chisel refined from the original, its handle inscribed with a single phrase: "Fragility invites wonder." Generations carried the lesson across kingdoms. Some fashioned sugar cathedrals for coronations, others spun edible constellations for scholars. Yet, among their masterpieces, they all reserved space for silence, acknowledging the unseen mentor who first bent light and sweetness into form. And when winter's first snow drifted over Castle Era, dusting its roofs like sifted sugar, Lucienne, now silver-haired yet clear-eyed, stood again at the kitchen window. She thought she saw far below footprints appearing in fresh powder, solitary and vanishing toward the ice house. She smiled, her breath fogging the glass. Beyond titles and time, art walked on,